Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Lee with the Fantasy Football Consultants, and welcome to Week 7, where we'll break down a full cash lineup on DraftKings and FanDuel. And before we get to that, I just want to thank all of the members of our community. So appreciate the support that we got last week. I did reach out to you and said, fight for this show, and you guys really responded. More likes on last week's video than in any other video except one, whether it was Survivor or DFS for the entire year. Truly appreciate it. Please keep it up. Smash that like button again. And I want to show you guys something on the old board over here. This is the number of people who watched the last show who are subscribed and who are not subscribed. Look, 60 some odd percent is pretty good, but we can do better. So if you are watching this show and you would like to see this show continue for further weeks, please smash the subscribe button. We would really appreciate it. And don't forget to put in the comment section who your favorite player is in Week 7 on the main slate for either DraftKings or FanDuel, or show us some more love. Tell us why you like the show the way it is, or if you see any improvements, we always like to hear it. All right, let's start with our cover boy, Rico Dowdle. He has been on our lineup for the last 2 weeks, and boy, has he paid us off. Ever since Chuba Hubbard has been out of the lineup and he has been the main back, he has gone bananas. Week 5 was tremendous. Over 200 yards, got into the end zone. Didn't think that he could top that. And he did, getting almost 37 fantasy points on DraftKings. Just absolutely dominant. 30 carries. Can you believe that? So DraftKings is panicking, right? It went from a $4,300 salary to a $5,800 salary. Now $6,800. Folks, I still think he is worth it as long as Chuba Hubbard is out again. I think that he will. Look, I think Dowdle's game has been so impressive that even when Hubbard comes back, I think Dowdle probably has deserved to be the main back, but he is going to get some of his carries vultured, some of his work in the passing game. So I don't like this pick as much if Hubbard plays, so watch the news. But if Hubbard is out, really like getting Dowdle back in the lineup despite his increased $6,800 price, because once again, he's in a great matchup facing the winless Jets and their defense, which is 23rd ranked against running backs. So with Dowdle, we will pair him with Devon Achane. He's expensive, folks. We're paying out $8,100 for him, but I think he's worth it because of his role in this offense, especially since Tyreek Hill is now out for the remainder of the year. Yes, he's going to be relied on as the bell cow running back, getting a bunch of carries, but I expect to lean on him in the passing game. They face a Cleveland Brown team that has, granted a good defense, but I like Achane here, so let's get him in our lineup. And from there, let's just fill out our third running back with our third bell cow back in Keyshawn Judkins. Look, I've told you before, block out the name, block out the team, and just look at the stats. Although I'll admit the stats last week were not good. And I think one of the reasons were they got behind. Game script was really bad. They got behind against Pittsburgh, threw it into more situation where they had to throw the ball. Look, he still got 12 of the 17 carries, but they had other running backs in when they were in obvious passing downs. I don't think that's the situation here. It's not often where I can say, look, I think the game script's going to be very good for Cleveland. Cleveland is definitely not going to be a favorite much, but they are this week. They are a home favorite against the Miami Dolphins, 3-point favorite. I think this is a good time to go back to Judkins. So we got both running backs in the Miami and Cleveland game. So 3 bell cow backs to anchor this lineup. And how about this? 3 number 1 wide receivers in very good matchups. We'll start with Ladd McConkey, who is at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Look, I think Ladd McConkey is already the number one wide receiver, but I do know that they still have Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnston has been hurt. We'll see if he plays. He was out last week. Unclear whether he'll play this week. But I'm happy with McConkey, whether he's in or out. But I'd feel better if Johnston is not playing. At $6,000, I think it's a very reasonable price for what McConkey can give you. But even a better deal, I think, at $5,600 is Rashee Rice. Now you look at the stats and go, what's going on with Rashee Rice? That's because he's been suspended. He finally comes off his 6-week suspension here in week 7. But I have no qualms in putting him immediately in the lineup. This is not a guy coming off an injury. This guy is Pat Mahomes' favorite target last year. I see no reason he doesn't immediately become that in a tremendous matchup, playing at home against the Las Vegas Raiders, who have been torched by wide receivers this year, 28th. Look, I think Rashee Rice is never going to be this cheap. Again, the rest of the season, let's take advantage. And the last wide receiver is Chris Olave with the New Orleans Saints. I wish he got into the end zone more. He hasn't only gotten in once this year. But other than that, I love his consistency, folks. In 5 of the 6 games, Olave has gotten double digits in targets for only $5,400, number one wide receiver against, a below average Chicago Bear defense. I'm okay with this. All right, that leaves tight end. And at tight end, I'm going with Zach Ertz. Why am I going with Zach Ertz? Because I have a rule. If I have a cash game, give me at least one player facing the Dallas Cowboy defense. And didn't work out that I could get Deebo Samuel in my lineup or Jaden Daniels. So I'll settle for Zach Ertz here at a minuscule price of $3,800. I just think this is by far the best matchup Ertz will have so far this year. And it's not like he's been bad. Week 3 and 4 were a little on the downside, but that was when Jaden Daniels was out. I think he benefits from a healthy Jaden Daniels. Don't know what happened in week 5, but I feel confident that we can get a nice floor with Zach Ertz this week, given his price. What does that leave us with? Let's talk about at quarterback. And, right out of our NFL DFS Master Class, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's free. Just go to the description and you can see all the rules to pick the right quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense. But at quarterback, Caleb Williams checks all the boxes that we want in an NFL DFS quarterback. He is mid-range price, which is good. He is at home. He is favored. And he faces a very poor defense, 28th ranked New Orleans Saints defense against quarterbacks this year. Let's get Caleb Williams in our lineup. Didn't happen last week, but for most of the season, he has been helping his stats a bit with his legs, and we like that. All right, the last player in our lineup. I can't believe I'm actually saying I'm excited to have the Carolina Panthers defense, and they are not too expensive. They're not basement, but $2,500 is a very reasonable price to pay for the Carolina Panthers defense. They're not a dominating defense, but what I love about them is their opponent this week, the New York Jets. Okay, folks. Justin Fields. Stats. Last week, 9 completions out of 17 attempts for 45 yards. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're just giving me the first quarter stats. Or Justin Fields got hurt, and therefore he must not, his backup must have. No. That was for the entire game. I don't think I've ever seen a offense have only 45 yards passing for the entire game where weather wasn't a major impact to the game. Why was his passing yards so down? Well, he gave up, the Jets' offensive line gave up count them, 9 sacks. So, man, for only 2,500, given that, let's get Carolina in our lineup. And I think this is a good moment where we can showcase the Jets dog. Yeah. What was the Jets dog thinking about 9 sacks against their team? Or what was the Jets dog thinking about a winless Jets team? So, hey, Carolina, I believe they have 3 wins already. Let's get them in the lineup. I kind of like this lineup. Let me know what you guys think. All right, everybody, let's switch over to FanDuel and let's determine what our cash lineup is. All right, here is our FanDuel lineup for week 7. And our poster boy is someone I am so excited to have a part of our cash lineup. It's Patrick Mahomes from the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, we all know how talented this player is, but what I want to start off talking about is his matchup. It just doesn't get any better than this. He is a home favorite, an implied total of 28.5 points. Incredible. And he faces a Las Vegas defense that is just terrible, folks. Not a good defense. And we see that he gets his favorite weapon back for the first time all year. Rashee Rice is back, all primed to have a monster game here for Patrick Mahomes. But the one thing about Pat Mahomes, if you've been paying attention, the guy can run. We always knew that. But what does he do? He usually saves that for the playoffs and certainly for the Super Bowl and the league championship game. But this year, he's not waiting. He is taking off and running when necessary, including 4 touchdowns on the ground this year for Pat Mahomes. That is such an added bonus. And you look at his salary and say $8,000. Oh, that's a lot of money. It really isn't. You can look and you see a lot of other quarterbacks this week who are significantly less talented in worse situations are only $300, $400, or $500 less. So we've got Pat Mahomes in this lineup. We're going with Rico Dowdle and A-Chain again. We discussed them in the DraftKings lineup. But I had my rule. I told you in DraftKings, we got to get a player who's facing the horrific Dallas Cowboys defense. That is Deebo Samuel. I believe the Cowboys are dead last fantasy-wise against wide receivers. So why not get Deebo Samuel in the lineup? Look, he had a quiet game last week. He was coming off an injury. I'm not certain that he was 100%. Hopefully he will be 100% this week. Don't even know if Terry McLaurin, who's been out a couple of weeks, whether he will be available in this game. Regardless, $7,100 is a very fair price for Deebo Samuel going against the Dallas Cowboy defense. We already talked about Ladd McConkey, but let's talk about Stephon Diggs. Bona fide #1 wide receiver on his team in a dream matchup against the Tennessee Titans. You gotta admire the Titans consistently. 31st against the rush, 31st against the pass, and dead last overall defense. Diggs disappeared last week. I'm not sure. I'm a Diggs owner in longtime fantasy. And look, I didn't Diggs his performance last week. It wasn't like New England didn't do well against New Orleans. Drake May had like 3 touchdown passes. For some reason, he wasn't looking Stephon Diggs' way. I think that is clearly an exception to the rule, as you see what he's done the previous couple of weeks. Dallas Goedert is only $100 more at tight end. The biggest concern that I have about this Philadelphia Eagles offense is how conservative it can be sometimes. So we don't want a situation where they get way up and they're running the ball a lot. I don't think playing at Minnesota in the way that the Eagles have struggled over the last 2 weeks, that they're going to be blowing out Minnesota early. So with that, I think that you can see the last 2 weeks, 9 targets and 11 targets. Hurts has been looking Goddard's way. Happy to get him in our lineup. And then at the flex, a new player to talk about, another player going against the Dallas Cowboy defense is Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt. All right. This is a rookie, but he is taken over the as the starting running back on this team. He is more the running back as opposed to the passing back, but I'm comfortable with him from a game script perspective. Look, Washington is better than Dallas, even though it's being played in Dallas. I expect Washington to win, and as long as they're playing from ahead, that's good news here for our guy. So I have no reservations about getting him in our lineup for only $6,600. And our defense is simply a punt defense. You don't get any cheaper than this at $3,000. But I'll tell you, I'd rather have the Saints defense than the Raiders defense. And I think I'd rather have them over the Arizona Cardinals as well. So I'm happy with New Orleans. They're not terrible this year. They're mid-range in sacks. They're mid-range in interception. The top in fumble recoveries. And he faces a Chicago Bear offense at best is average, but also can potentially be mistake prone. So for a complete punt defense, the cheapest defense on FanDuel, I'm happy to get the New Orleans Saints. So there's the lineup. I'm really curious to hear from you guys. Please tell us, how could this lineup be improved? What changes would you make? And as we head on out, and we see on the screen is our logo. Be sure, if you haven't yet, click on that logo and hit the subscribe button to join the FFC family. Greatly appreciate everyone in our community. Take care, have a great week 7, and we'll see you next time.